Welcome everyone to Workshop 1 of the Cost of Doing Business series. I'm Kelly Brown. I'm pleased to be joined today by Stacey Joseph from the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who we're partnering to deliver this workshop series. And we have a special guest today, Danielle Slade. So you'll hear from both of the ladies very shortly. But firstly, I'd like to start by acknowledging the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. So I'd like to just quickly let you know about Business Tasmania. So we're a statewide service delivered through the Department of State Growth. We're accessible to everyone across Tasmania, whether you're thinking about starting a business or you're in business, any industry, any size. You can actually contact Business Tasmania on our 1800 440 026 contact number, or via our website. We have lots of different ways you can connect with us there, which is business.tas.gov.au. So you can actually, we're a central point, or I guess a front door to access government support, and you can come to us and have a chat about anything at all business related. Through the presentation, you're going to hear lots of great gems and advice of different things to help you run your business. And to follow on from what you're going to learn about and hear about today, you can actually connect with our Business Tasmania team to access free advice from a business advisor through the New Business Support Pilot Program, which we affectionately sometimes called NBS. You might hear that today, or the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. So both of those service offerings are free, so no cost, and you can access 2 hours to get started with the New Business Support Pilot Program, and then go on to access 5 hours each financial year through the Tasmanian Business Advice Service, which we also have a little short name, TBAS. So you might hear that mentioned today as well. So they're two advice service offering that you'll hear referred to today. And just to remember, you can come back to Business Tas to access those advisors on any aspect of running your business, on different things you'll hear about today, but more broadly on anything to help you to run your business as best as you possibly can. So what I'll do now is hand over to Stacey Joseph to introduce the session today.
Thanks so much, Kelly. It's lovely to be here today for the first in the exciting workshop series around cost of doing business. So today's workshop is all about managing costs, and we're diving into something that's top of mind for pretty much every small business right now. And we're going to learn how to manage expenses, reduce waste and improve financial resilience without compromising on quality of service. So whether you're trying to trim the fat, renegotiate with suppliers, or just make sense of where your money's actually going, this session is all about practical advice designed to help your business. And we're very lucky today to be joined by Danielle Slade from Rural Business Tasmania. Danielle works closely with regional and rural business owners across the state, and she brings a heap of insight when it comes to making smart, sustainable financial decisions under pressure. She's also an advisor with the Tasmanian Business Advice Service, which Kelly just mentioned, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the session as well. So you're in good hands. Let's get into it. So Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today. The first question we have is, what is effective cost management and why is it critical for Tasmanian businesses?
Absolutely. So obviously, effective cost management is about allowing your business to adjust your budgets on what are realistic income patterns. So it's about helping manage cash flow and avoiding financial distress. And so for all of us, whichever your industry, whether summer's your high season or your low season, we all have those times where our income, our revenue, they change throughout the year. It's not a stock standard flat income revenue stream. So it's all about that proactive planning for those fluctuations so that you have the ability to stay afloat in those low revenue periods. So it's all about challenging, are there expenses due in low periods that can be paid for prior during high periods? Are there costs that can be minimised during low periods? So for example, you might have a cafe that's projecting that this year their turnover is going to be $10,000 a week or $520,000 for the year. But obviously once they start tracking them, they're going to start seeing that in the high periods that might look like 20,000 during those high periods during summer, and maybe just as low as 5,000 during winter. So it's about adjusting your budget so that you can reflect those seasonal swings, so that you can better manage that cash flow and avoid that kind of winter panic or that low season panic.
Awesome. Great advice. It would be nice if our cash flow was steady and regular, but generally that is not the case.
Not at all.
And so can we talk a little bit about the impact of that limited resources on profitability and long-term success? You sort of talked a little bit about collecting the information in order to know when you need to pay things and when you're going to have like the high revenue and low revenue.
Absolutely. And especially when our resources are really limited, cost management is a really effective way to ensure that every dollar is used really wisely to support growth and profitability. So one of the models that we see all the time, we might have two very similar businesses that have similar levels of stock level for the year, where one may look at investing in that stock and sort of buying it in on bulk and actually storing it and turning it over the course of the year, where another may look at saying, well, I'm going to turn my stock over, 6 or more times throughout the year. So it means that as I'm buying stock, I'm investing less of my cash. I'm less reliant on having to look at credit. I'm not having carrying costs like storage. And more importantly, those dollars that I'm not spending on stock, I can use for other things. So marketing, other strategic plans. And I guess if we are a leaner, more nimble sort of business that's looking at our stock really, really closely, we can also pivot and look at new ideas and new products. So we've not spent all those dollars and they're currently sitting on a shelf waiting for a customer that may be a long time away, whereas instead we can use those dollars to buy things that we can turn over much quicker and actually improve our profitability.
Yeah, nice. And I wonder how many businesses have got warehouses full of things like fidget spinners that, were all the rage at one point. And
they were a good idea.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome. So I guess the next question that I have for you is, what are some of the most commonly overlooked business expenses and how can we reduce some of those?
Absolutely. So really, it's all about knowing. The first place is I've got to know and be looking and I guess challenging every one of those little expenses. So it's those things that whether it's the long forgotten Norton antivirus subscription that you signed up to a long time ago, or where we've got redundancies, like we've got overlapping services. So we've got some, for example, some customer relationship management tools and, we're using different ones when if we actually go and look, we could potentially find one that solves all of our needs and all of our processes that's going to be cheaper than a redundant paying for things more than once. So, it could be just as simple as seeing how you do things and then actually trying to engage some sort of technology that covers everything that you're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess businesses will often focus on some of those bigger ticket items at the expense of some of those smaller recurring expenses or, things like bank fees and interest rates. And what sort of tips have we got for identifying and maybe reducing some of those?
So a good one is obviously you need to be doing the review, and it really does come down to I need to be looking at my bank statements and looking at my actual all the expenses that I'm paying, and actually really challenge whether or not they are necessary or whether or not there's another or a cheaper option. So it could well be something like looking at things like replacing old air conditioning to try or insulation to try and reduce energy bills. It could even be look at things like I know I've had a client in the past who had a large amount of unused space in her newsagent and post office. And so she was actually able to partner with someone locally who actually opened up an alterations business in an unused area of her store, so that not only was she able to get some income, some rent from that person, her business was always also able to be open longer hours. So they actually kind of shared the outgoings and also shared the opening hours. And it was kind of a complementary business. So it actually allowed them to even open up a space where other local providers who were making handmade goods could put their goods up for sale as well. And it was kind of like they're working together to sort of manage costs together. The other side of inefficiency is also can be caused by not spending. So sometimes we need to look at things like making sure that we're repairing things as they become needed, that we use maintenance, that we're careful and that we're spending money where we need to so that we're not having to replace those big ticket items. It can even just be as simple as, ensuring that equipment is stored appropriately so that things aren't being damaged or wear or tear. And then also those little things like checking the seals for refrigeration or cleaning vents. These are all the things that can absolutely save those dollars. And if we do that often enough, it's really going to have a big impact.
Yeah, there's such great practical tips. And one of the other costs I think that would be worth talking about is those inefficiencies in processes, and that we might not be maximising the value of our team's time when they're actually in the workplace. What sort of tips have you got for maybe identifying and eliminating those?
Absolutely. There's so many of those little things that once we actually deal with those operational inefficiencies, we're going to be saving time and money. So I had a landscaper who was who sort of had a little bit of a team and suddenly realised that because they weren't managing their inventory effectively, their staff was spending, or his work team was spending up to an hour a day restocking inventory. So by centralising their inventory, it not only allowed them to not waste that time to have to go back and restock, but also it meant that inventory management was a much more tightly model, and they could look at things like volume discounts and actually looking at what they were actively losing in real time so that those workers are actually freed up to actually be out making billable time. So additionally, that in of itself, one of the benefits of actually setting up these processes is it is a really good space to be able to document the processes, and it really forces you as an owner to clearly define how the business should operate and gives you your staff some really clear guidance. So when everyone knows what needs to be done and how and when, it becomes easier to prioritise those high value activities and eliminate or delay tasks that don't directly contribute to profitability or don't need to be done now. So I also like to flag with this one, a sale isn't a sale until it's paid for. So by having these processes in place, I've known a lot of tradies that are really good at finding work and really great at doing work, but they're terrible at invoicing. And so if you have these processes set up, you're going to get your invoices out quickly. You're going to get them paid more quickly. And if you've got really good terms with your suppliers, you might have an eventuality where you're getting paid in 7 days, but you don't have to pay for goods for 30 or 45 days. So it's about doing a little bit in that same sort of process. So it's just the natural thing that when we get to this day, this is the focus. And hopefully that's going to be that benefit to your cash flow so that you're actually being able to manage things more easily because you've got money moving through much more quickly.
Yeah, that's so great. And I can hear a lot of business owners saying, well, that's all well and good, but I'm very busy working in my business. I think it's really important to see these kind of activities as a real investment of your time. And if you can reduce some of those expenses and implement some of those suggestions that you've made, you'll actually find that you will have more time to work on your business because you're making a better margin on your products or services or whatever it might be. And even consulting with the team about identifying areas where they can see those opportunities to be more efficient. It is really just a bit of a mindset shift sometimes, as seeing that as an investment as opposed to, another thing that I have to put on my to-do list and get done as a business owner. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I think it's also good to note that if we're across these things, we're also going to pick up where we've got expenses that aren't actually necessary. So one of the things I always think that we've got a kind of a rule of thumb that says, many businesses spend 90 cents to make $1. And so when we've got that kind of margin, if we actually save $1 on an expense, well, we're making much more because we're not just making that 10 cents on the actual trade, we're saving that whole dollar. So it arguably becomes profit. The other area that I think we lose track of a little bit is we get into that rut where we're so used to the bank or the credit that we have, and we're not actually looking at challenging things like bank fees. I always get a surprise at how often that if you push, you never know what kind of variation or change or benefit or a better deal, a better rate, some form of discount that your bank may be willing to do. I know that I had a very recent client who's been struggling, and she actually bought a cafe that was already running, and she just went with the actual FPOS point of sale service that they had. And when we started to drill down into her numbers, what she found is she was paying about $300 a month for that service. And when she spoke to her bank, they were willing to provide her those FPOS terminals for free. So she's now just paying the actual merchant rate. So just looking at those things and kind of challenging them, using things like benchmarking to see what's usual and normal, and actually saying, well, where I'm deviating from what is usual, how am I doing things differently that I'm not getting the same kind of amounts that other people in my industry are doing?
Yeah. And I guess that really speaks to the next question around how businesses can categorise and track those expenses more effectively. You know, great to have all of your receipts, you know, under the front seat of the car or somewhere like that. So what sort of recommendations have you got on how businesses can do that in a more effective way?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things in that. So the first one is all about using some form of accounting software. So, and once we've got that kind of thing off the shelf that we're going to use, we actually need to streamline it and make it fit for purpose for us. So those chart of accountant listings that expense listings that are provided with those, they're perfect for your accountant, but they're probably not perfect for your business. And so the more that you can break down those expenses and actually make it be something that fits your business, the more clearly you're going to be able to identify, you know, where is something tracking that's not right, or more importantly, where are those high profit areas of my business that I can actually push. Realistically, what's most important about having these kinds of software is it's actually about setting up the system. So it doesn't really matter. The technology, there's a range of them that you can look at, but what's going to be really important about you drilling in and setting these things up for yourself is that if you make it your priority, then you're going to be more likely to be planning for profit rather than hoping for it.
Yeah. That's a great line. Plan for profit. Don't just crush your fingers and do what you've always done and hope that it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
And look, sometimes it does, but I feel like this, when the economy is like this and all of our costs are going up, you know, if we don't take the time to I guess, set it up so we've got good data, it does mean that we're flying a little bit blind. So can you talk to us a little bit about the role of regular expense reviews in improving that financial decision making?
Absolutely. So I think that if every business person I've ever spoken to has always said to me, I've got 2 tasks for every minute and two debts for every dollar. So I think if we're actually looking at those things really closely, it starts to be, instead of just doing what we've always done, it becomes a situation where we're actually genuinely saying, is this required? Is it necessary? And it means that we're also looking at things like if you're overpaying for something, or particularly if you're not reviewing expenses and you've got duplicate payments, that somehow you're paying for the same thing twice. If that goes right through your financial year, and especially if you don't lodge your tax until the following April, you're going to have the 12 months that you were overpaying, you know, plus the additional ones through to April. So you're going to have potentially up to 21 months of overpayment. And we both know how hard it is to get money back from someone when we've overpaid. So it's just another mess that you don't need. So if we're doing those regular reviews, then we're going to pick those things up quicker so that the impact is going to be far less. And I guess also too, it's an element of you can make much more informed decisions. Like you can absolutely make better decisions when you know something new comes up, new technology, and will this work with what I'm already doing, or am I already covering this kind of expense?
Absolutely.
And I do think that that does roll into, if we're setting up these processes, particularly now we've got so much opportunity with technology, things like digitising receipts and invoices just makes life easier. So digitising invoices means we can move them quicker, we can send reminders quicker, we can chase up payments much more easily. Sometimes it's a complete automated system. But more importantly, particularly for those people that have got high levels of deductible receipts, if we get those digitised, number one, we're not going to lose any, but more important, it actually makes that kind of resistance that we feel when it comes time to lodging our tax, because it's such a daunting thing to do. I'm going to have to go find stuff. Well, if it's all just there and it's been a part of your processes, it's going to be a far more simpler, more streamlined process, and you're going to be more likely to do it timely, quickly, so that you can actually move on to things that are more important around your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody loves having to hunt down all of their receipts, and you're absolutely bound to lose some of them. So yes, we should be getting everything back that we possibly can. We're paying the tax office enough usually, so
absolutely
anything else we can get back is always good. All right, so can you talk to us a little bit about the best cost-cutting strategies for businesses that don't make the business compromise on quality?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most important thing I can say is it's all about boosting productivity. Yeah. So we want to make sure that you're getting the most value from your team without sacrificing any quality. So it's about delegating or automating anything that's not actual core to your business, so that you actually can be freeing up as much time as possible for that income and profit generating activities. So the way I would frame that is an electrician who charges their time out at $150 an hour, is actually losing money if he's spending 10 hours a week doing admin that he could outsource to someone else at $30 an hour. And more often than not, if we've got that as one of our processes, that whole admin process is going to be streamlined. You're going to have a system set up so that that admin can come in, just do the functions. So you're only paying for what needs to be done. You're not paying for their chat with the other employees, or you're just basically getting those functional tasks done, which would then free you up to be actually out generating more income, billing more hours, or marketing, actually seeking more business and more customers.
Yeah, growing your business. So you touched on this a little bit before about talking to the banks. How does negotiating better contracts or supplier contracts, how can that lower costs without affecting service quality?
So usually it can be something as simple as we're doing a bigger order less frequently, but you become a fairly appealing customer for your supplier. So on one hand, we can save on things like transportation and delivery costs, but also if you're a bigger order, more often than not, suppliers will offer you a bulk discount. It also can really strengthen your position as a valued customer. So when a supplier knows that losing your business would have a noticeable impact on their bottom line, you're going to be more likely to offer favourable terms, prioritise your order, provide you some flexibility. If there's a time where we've got some scarcity, you might find that your supply chain is a little bit more robust because you're a valued customer for your supplier.
And I guess that feeds in, and you did also touch on this before about optimising that inventory management. So there's a bit of a fine balance, isn't there, between having a warehouse full of fidget spinners nobody wants, but also making sure that we've got enough that we're not selling out and missing out on selling something.
Absolutely. And I guess it's using all of those tools that can help you with that. So that just-in-time ordering, I think we're seeing more and more with all of the sort of online retail that's available these days. Usually for most businesses, just-in-time ordering absolutely works. Much simpler, amounts that we need to be managing to pay for that stock. And again, if we've got those good relationships, we've got longer terms, and it means that you're just trying to turn over what you want. You're unlikely to end up with stale or leftover stock that you sort of, everyone finds those businesses has got a storeroom with the things that were left over from 2 years ago. It's kind of keeping yourself nice and nimble. If something's not selling, let's move it on and find something that is, and just keeping up with that, what's happening now, and just ordering as you need, and then using those systems that you can use to track your stock management and keeping on top of what you actually need to be, enough to sufficient to be able to meet your customers' needs, but not so much that you're actually having resources tied up and paying carrying costs to have stock that's not moving.
Yeah. And I guess that makes that stronger argument for having a good accounting platform that has all of that data in there, because then you can see how quickly things are moving or not moving, and you're not going to go and buy, I don't know, a warehouse full of something you only sell 5 of a year because it's cheap.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I did want to come back to the workforce productivity, because one of the ways to increase productivity is really about having standard operating procedures and training staff and making sure we invest in them when they start with us, or if we've got a new product or service, to make sure that we're getting the best out of them. And again, a lot of employers or business owners would see that training as a cost to their business, but it really is an investment, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think what's nice about it, although setting up processes and more importantly documenting them can be a little bit of an arduous thing, there are heaps of resources that can help you with that. And it kind of challenges you as a business owner to actually take the time to sit down and decide how you want things done, how you want things set up, what are the priorities, so that it's nice and clear, there's a nice, clear, concise message. And then as you onboard new staff, there's another opportunity for, to review. So you've got a new person looking through those processes and actually saying, yep, I understand that, or questioning. And then as things change, it's just a matter of updating that document. So it's always ready to go. And then also, not only does it give you a nice clear way and your plan of how you're trying to run your business, but it also gives your staff a resource. So when they've got that first question and they're not quite entirely sure of what the next step is, they do have a starting place where they know what's expected of them and what the priorities are.
Yeah, many benefits to that. Again, another good investment of time, not necessarily a cost. And once it's set up and running, like your accounting software, it's really just a matter of inputting the data into it and away you go, kind of thing. So yeah, great tips. So I think we've sort of answered this question a few times, but maybe if we could just get the key points in terms of how businesses can negotiate better deals with their suppliers.
So the first step to this one is you need to understand your needs. The first part of the answer to a question comes in the question. So what is it that you're actually looking for and what do you need for your business? And then about comparing alternatives that actually strengthen your position. So it's going to take a little bit of time to do some research. We're lucky that so much information is available on the internet. And then it's really just about trying to see if you can compare. So it's about you getting nice and prepared and then actually backing your negotiation. So contacting a supplier that, as we've already talked about, you've got a good relationship with, and you're a good payer yourself, and there is a mutual relationship there. And then actually simply seeking out what it is that you're wanting from your actual supplier, and then using that data that you have to support why you think it's a reasonable request. So it's really about investing some time in that well negotiated relationship that you have with your suppliers, and then using that research to try and seek a better term, better pricing. And don't forget, it's not just about trying to get a better price. It could be something as longer terms. To extend your payment terms from 30 days to 45 is a great outcome for the cash flow for your business. And then, if it did lead to reduced costs of your goods, then obviously that's going to make a direct impact to the bottom line for your business.
Yeah, excellent advice. I was even thinking about that in terms of our business. We do a lot of travel, and so we negotiate with accommodation providers or with, people that have got meeting space for hire. And if we come and stay with you 10 times this year, what can you do for us in terms of a corporate rate and those sorts of things? So if you don't ask, you don't get, really, do you?
Yeah, and absolutely for that business as well, to have those things in their pipeline, they've got some projection where they can sort of have a bit of an idea of, some income that's going to be consistent for their business. So I think it really is a mutual benefit for both organisations, because, that guaranteed income, especially in those low periods, is going to help that provider. And so they're going to be motivated to keep that business because that's going to be that fallback business that they need to get through their times.
Excellent. So I think what we'd love to know now is, if I've sat through this webinar, what are the first steps that I should take after watching this webinar or this workshop so that I can improve my cost management?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is it's about setting up clear expense categories and tracking systems. So the first thing we need to do is look at how your business is done. So I know I had a lovely friend who's got a fish and chip shop, and when they first took over their business, they decided that because they were going to be buying their soft drinks just from Coles and Woolies, and they were basically making 100% markup on their item, they were selling all of their drinks for $2. So regardless of the drink you got, it was $2. And for them, it was really about, because they're a little bit regional, they saw it as a really good way to try and do something nice for their customers. The trouble is that for most of their customers, it was just an add-on to a bigger order. So they weren't really noticing the fantastic deal they were getting. And once I convinced them to actually look at breaking these out for, from cans to bottles to drinks to specialty drinks, and actually making them a reasonable market value. We're not talking service station prices, but something that's reasonable. Their bottom line for drinks went up 30%. But more important than that, what they noted, they hadn't realised, one of the benefits that they'd had for their staff is that they were quite okay with staff. It's a hot in a fish and chip shop, so you can grab a drink if you want one. They were able to manage their stock so much more closely that they found out that prior they were buying about 10 packs of vanilla Coke in cans a week. And when a staff member left, they were selling about 3 cans a week. So it really highlighted that, the 5 to 8 cans a week they thought they were losing to keeping their staff happy was a far, I think possibly there were a couple taken home at night, and it wasn't made clear. So I don't think the staff member was doing anything inappropriate. She was just taking advantage of what she thought was being offered. So that would have been picked up far quicker. And arguably, as part of that process flow, they would have said, yes, we're happy for you to have a drink. This is what that looks like, and been much more clear about that. So really good categorisation. This also allows you to focus on what sells the most. So again, my lovely friend in her fish and chip shop, I said to her, in passing what fish makes the most money, because I didn't know. And she didn't either. So she went and had a conversation with a partner and actually found out it actually depends on the price of fresh fish, and that difference can be anywhere up to 80 cents per piece. So you can be sure that she now knows which is the piece that's got the biggest margin, and if people want her opinion, it's going to be that one, because she's very, very sure that the quality of her fish across her offering is fine and the person will have a great experience. But if she can increase her in each sale for each customer an extra 80 cents per person, this makes a massive difference to their bottom line.
It's such a great point. And I guess that's one of the things that the Tasmanian Business Advice Service can help businesses with as well, is understanding what it actually costs to deliver that product or service, and what are your, high volume, high margin products. If people are asking us for their opinion or we're wondering what to recommend, perhaps that can be a really good source of data to be able to say, if somebody's asking which sort of fish to get, this is the one that we always recommend. Good quality, but also we have a great margin on that, so we like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would actually second that. Absolutely. You have such an opportunity by accessing the new business support pilot program and the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. They have so much good information. If we go through that service, you can get even better benchmarking data. So people like me love when we look at benchmarking, because if the average person, whom we assume is definitely making money, if their numbers are a bit different to yours, if your food costs 50% and industry standard is 30, we've already identified where the problem is. We've just got to find the problem. And then also there's a great opportunity that those business advisors can help you set up look at ways that you can set up audit processes and help you get that process underway. And even look at things like reviewing financials. New eyes, we're going to see new things. And someone like me is always going to challenge your budget assumptions, because we don't want to be too, we want reasonable numbers, conservative numbers. We don't want to be outlandish numbers that we're not going to reach. And then also be looking at those individual line item and expenses and actually looking at those and sort of having those conversations with you. The other is an audit. Not only do you need to do one, you need to do one regularly, because an audit helps you find the questions so that you're better able to find those answers. And that's really what the focus is. If we can save everywhere we can, find where we've got those redundancies and inefficiencies and actually try and deal with them.
And I just want to explore that word audit, because I do know that it strikes fear in the heart of most business owners, because it does have some quite negative connotations. So some of the things that, as a business owner, if I was going to undertake an audit, what are some of those sort of, I guess, low-hanging fruit areas that you would suggest I look at?
Yeah. So the first thing I always start with is, let's go look at some bank statements. Let's just go through the last 3 months of bank statements and just see if there's any anomalies and that everything's tracking, and really just get really familiar with what all of our expenses are. And then the next one is looking at our previous profit and loss and actually moving through that again to see if there's anything that seems to be out of the ordinary. And then compare it to our current one and look at doing a profit and loss projection. So we're actually got a roadmap of what we're sort of expecting, so that we can see how closely we're actually meeting up to those goalposts. So it's really just as simple as, let's get a bit of a roadmap. It's not set in stone, but at least we've got a path that we would follow. And then the other part of it is that audit. We need to be looking at your processes. So we need to try and find, is there redundancy? Is the wrong person doing the thing that needs to be done? So for example, there's no point a business owner spending 5 hours trying to sort out an IT issue with Google's help, when we could just pay an IT professional for half an hour of their time to solve it quickly. So it's really about sort of challenging I say this one all the time. Business owners, every dollar has two expenses and every minute has 2 jobs. So how can we actually invest this current minute that you have as a business owner into the things that are going to generate the most income, the most profit, and be the most growth for your business?
Yeah, so it's really about identifying those non-core business tasks that need to happen, how much time we're spending on them, and what could we be doing with that time if we were paying somebody else to do it that will probably do it in a quarter or a tenth of the amount of time it would take us. And which is a really nice segue, because that is one of the future workshops, that insource or outsource. So what should we be keeping in-house and what should we be taking out of house or outsourcing to people. And I guess part of that is also engaging employees and stakeholders in our cost saving efforts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So by doing that process of that audit and setting up those processes, obviously you're going to get feedback from your team. It's a great opportunity to say to your team, have you got suggestions? Like, it doesn't take people love a little bit of a reward, a nice box of chocolates for anyone who comes up with a great idea that we implement. It's really just about recognizing that, particularly in small businesses, you're, as much as you are a business, you're also some kind of dysfunctional family. Like, we're all kind of in it together. We need each other. And so your staff are often a really untapped resource. They can have really great ideas and they just don't know how to share them. So really encouraging them, and then involving them in that review, like actually making it a little bit fun and taking the time to involve your staff in it. Let's review what we do and how we can do better. We don't just want to be monkeys who do what we've always done. That's why we keep doing it. We want to try and find different and new ways to do stuff, and then acknowledging that contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a bit of a question everything kind of approach for a little while, isn't it? If we're really looking at making a serious impact on some of these costs, is just, question everything that we're doing. And then I suppose it's really important to keep doing those things regularly and not just kind of doing it once and then, patting ourselves on the back and moving on with life and never doing it again.
Yeah. So the other thing I would say, or I do say to all of my clients, is there is a little bit of a plan that we can do kind of with the season. So I sort of say for people in autumn, so for March, April and May, it's about tax moves. Can we spend some of the summer money to try and minimise our tax? In winter, it's all in the June, July, August, it's all about planning makes perfect. So marketing plans, social media plans, business strategy. It's cold. Let's get some focus on getting things down on paper. That's about our strategy for the coming year. Spring is all about that ramping up. So September, October, and November, it's about projecting your workforce needs. So actually thinking about is my staff sufficient? Do they have what they need? Are we set up? And kind of clearing out the cobwebs and getting things set up so that things that can be done now can be done. So we don't need to do them during our high season, and anything that can't be done now can be put off until we've got some more time when we get into the autumn, and really just thinking about that spring clean. And then the summer months, so our December, January and February, it's all about work. So it's all about maximising return, revenue and profits. It's time to focus on what needs to be done, but not holding those non-essential things to a time when we don't have that opportunity to make money. And then I guess the last thing I do say to clients, there's so many good resources around benchmarking. It is absolutely worth a read. The ATO provides some, Business Tasmania access some even better benchmarks, and across all industries and a range of different kinds of business types. These are a really good place to actually find where you're doing things differently, and then that helps us find those things those quick wins, things that we can change quickly that are going to have an impact.
Yeah. And if you are one of those lucky businesses that don't have their peak season over the Christmas period, then you just apply that to a different calendar.
The opposite way.
Wouldn't it be nice? So such great advice. So I'm just going to recap those takeaways in terms of we need to make sure that we've set up clear expense categories and tracking so that we've got the data to make good decisions. Conduct that initial audit and, starting with our bank statements and talking to our staff about opportunities to improve processes and be more efficient. And then trying to set up a bit of a calendar of a review process so that we're ready to rock and roll and we're not caught out, heading into our busy season and we haven't really thought about how we maximise the revenue opportunities and minimise our costs during those periods.
Fantastic.
And if we're finding all of that, oh my goodness, where do I start? And I don't know, and how am I going to do that? I will come back to the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. So Kelly talked about at the beginning, Danielle's mentioned it a few times. This is a great service. All of the advisors that provide advice run their own businesses or work in businesses that do this stuff for a living. If you were paying for 5 hours or 2 hours of advice, it would be a cost on your business. But if you're an eligible business, so 19 or less full-time equivalent employees, then you can actually access this service for free and you can get it every year. So all of the businesses that we've referred have had really good experiences. Danielle is one of the business advisors and she's certainly demonstrated her amazing knowledge. So if you are not sure where to start, but you definitely want to start this journey, I would totally encourage you to come along to or to jump onto the website and register to see an advisor. You can pick your own, or you can be randomly allocated somebody depending on what your preference is.
And you can come and see us face to face, or you can do everything over the phone. So I always think, it's absolutely worth a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's no commitment. So if you do sign up and then you decide you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But yeah, strongly recommend accessing that service. And I'd just like to say a massive thank you to you, Danielle. You've been amazing. Some great practical tips for business that you can take straight away and apply. And I will just give a little plug to workshop number 2, which is going to be on Thursday, the 13th of May. And that's all about leveraging existing opportunities for your business. So if you haven't already registered for that, please register. If you can't make it along on the day, we will be recording the workshop, so you will be able to access it after the fact as well. So I'm going to hand back over to Kelly now.
Thank you, Stacey. And thank you, Danielle. That was great. There's so much there that people can really think about and digest and work through at their own pace, and or access the business advice service that we offer. So this recording will be available on our Business Tasmania YouTube channel, and as the other series in this workshop's the next 4, over the next 4 consecutive weeks, they will also be on our YouTube channel. So in the meantime, if you have any questions or want to access support, please contact Business Tasmania on 1800 440 026. Everyone loves a chat and wants to help. So thank you again and enjoy your day.